Hyper Beats. Hyper Beats.
All right, and what is going on, everyone? It is the boys here from Across the Plane, and we are here to bring you our Week 11 fantasy football rankings. My name is Will. You can find me on Instagram at MPLS_outdoors. We are a part of Across the Plane. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Across the Plane, and check us out on YouTube and Spotify. We do fantasy shows, but we also do a podcast that just covers all sports. Below me is
Jake the Rookie, and that's THA, and that's the same way Across the Plane is spelled below. You can find me on Twitter, and yeah, we're just here to talk fantasy football and give you an outlook for Week 11. We're getting to crunch time, about to see some playoffs matchups or constellations depending on how the year went for you, and it's time to get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Tomorrow is the trade deadline for a lot of leagues, so if you have any trade questions, make sure you ask that. Looks like we got some buys with Bears, Bills, Giants, Niners on the bye, but we're prepared for that. We are 40 minutes out to Thursday night football kickoff of Arizona Cardinals playing at Seattle Seahawks. That should be an exciting matchup. Should be hopefully a lot of fantasy points scored in that matchup. Unfortunately, it looks like Chris Carson is not able to suit up. He was ruled out on Saturday last week, and they came out and said he's 100% that he's going to play. But that is not looking like that's the case.
And I don't think they said 100%. They said they were feeling really good or something. It was something like
I got a notification on from ESPN.
It was like they were like saying it was for sure, but they like quoted it in some funny way so they could back out at the end, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Be like, wait, we told you we thought we're like 100%. Almost 100%. It was something like that.
Yeah, and
we said almost.
It's tough with those foot injuries.
I think a lot of times teams starting to do this just to have the other team game plan for the running back and then throw a whole new one out there.
Yeah.
That's something I can definitely see Pete Carroll doing, just trying to be sneaky.
Yeah, and then Joe Mixon still has not practiced this week. Obviously, Friday's a big one, but he hasn't practiced all week. It's not looking good. I mean, obviously, if he practiced on Friday, that's a good thing, and it's looking up. But I'm at this point, I'm preparing, and rankings wise, to not have Joe Mixon.
Yeah, and you've probably been used to that. Even if you've had him before in the past, or if you've had him this year, because he's an injury-prone running back, and it's been leg injuries and foot injuries.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he hasn't practiced in over a month now. He hasn't. Yeah, I mean, it was October 18th that he got injured. So it's hopefully Joe Mixon doesn't look like it's going to be this week. Hopefully it's the week after. And then Kenny Galladay looks like he might be able to return this week. That receiving core is pretty banged up. Matt Stafford is also banged up, but it looks like Kenny Galladay is returning, and he is going to find his way in our rankings this week.
Yeah, when on the field, he's a player I like to play in lineups.
Yeah, absolutely. He has really high touchdown upside.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's get into these rankings. Premier, get through them before this game here.
Yeah, absolutely.
QB rankings here. Tonight we expect a lot of points. Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, number 2 and 3. Patrick Mahomes, obviously number 1. I honestly, at this point of the season, I think from here on out, it's looking like it's going to be Mahomes and Kyler Murray 1 and 2.
I won't say every week, but you can't bet against those two.
Rest of the season, those are my 1 and 2. I'll say that.
Yeah, I think some weeks I might, just depending on how I still want to believe in Wilson, and then I still think there's weeks where I like Aaron Rodgers a lot. But yeah, Mahomes and Murray they're doing the best fantasy wise so far. So I can't argue with that 1 and 2. But I'm not gonna say for sure. I haven't looked through the rest of the matchups.
Yeah, we're hoping, obviously, Russell Wilson owners are hoping that he turns it around. He had 9 points last week. The week before, he still managed a good fantasy game. But he's had 7 interceptions now in his last 4 games. And he's had a couple of fumbles to go along with it. Or he's lost 3 fumbles. So he's had 10 turnovers now in the last 4 games. Now, granted, he has had good fantasy production, but last week he only scored 9 points. I do obviously think it's going to be better. Last time they played Arizona, he had 29.9 fantasy points. But, yeah, I mean, Russell Wilson, number 3. I mean, that was his first game where he scored under 20 fantasy points. So, I mean, I think we have to give a pass for 1 week to 1 or 2 weeks to any quarterback.
Yeah, I don't know about any quarterback, but Russell Wilson for sure.
Yeah, I mean, all of the top quarterbacks are gonna have a couple of dud weeks.
Yeah, I still like him this week. He had a decent fantasy performance last time, or really good actually. But for Russ, it was just average
Against the Cardinals.
Yeah.
I honestly, for Russ's standards, he played pretty poor. He had a under 65% completion
percentage. 50 attempts last time.
Yeah, he had 3 interceptions though.
Yeah, and they didn't get the win. So I think the win is definitely the most important thing.
I don't know.
Week for them. So
yeah.
I'm looking for that to be any means necessary. So if they get the lead early, I expect them to run the ball a lot.
Yeah, I agree with you. It looks like Carlos Hyde is playing. Last week we saw Alex Collins take the lead back. But yeah, Russell Wilson, obviously, we'd like to see the turnovers cut down, but he's been showing in the last couple weeks he can produce high fantasy outputs even with turnovers, but we would like to see those cut down.
Yeah. Then next we got Justin Herbert against New York Jets. Safe, solid player, safe, solid matchup. That's all I'm going to say. I like him here.
Yeah, Justin Herbert.
Upside.
Exactly. Yeah, that's really all you can say. He's been super solid. He is now up to, see, he's averaging 23.8 fantasy points a game. I want to say that puts him right at 5. I want to say that puts him at 5 or 6. Averaging 23.8 a game.
Something like that.
So if you were able to grab Josh Allen, you're super high on him. That's actually more than Aaron Rodgers. So it's yeah, he's averaging the 5th most points for a quarterback in fantasy.
Yeah.
Josh Allen's on him
usually
by.
gets you 20 points a game, and his ceiling so far has been 38.
Yeah, absolutely.
The worst he's done is 15 points.
Yeah, I mean,
in a game where he threw for 300 yards still. So he's a really good player.
Yeah.
Solid.
I mean, yeah, there's not much to say about these guys. Aaron Rodgers is still a must start. It's at the Colts. I think people are worried about this matchup, but I'm not. The way they use Aaron Rodgers, he has such a safe floor. I mean, it's Aaron Rodgers. You know, you can't.
Yeah, don't be worried.
Yeah,
it's Aaron Rodgers.
He might not have get you 30, but I think he'll definitely get you over 20. Next up, Ben Roethlisberger couldn't be in line for another big game at Jacksonville.
Yeah, I agree. Very favorable matchup. I like him a lot. I stream him in.
Yeah. Next up, Deshaun Watson versus New England. Obviously, we're at the point of the season where we could keep an eye on the weather in there, but if the weather's fine, Deshaun Watson's going to keep his ranking at number 7 there.
Yeah, and I don't. Tennessee's not really known for terrible weather.
New England.
Oh, I thought we were talking about Lamar Jackson.
No, we're on Deshaun Watson.
Deshaun Watson. Yeah, New England. Yeah. So keep an eye on the weather, but Deshaun Watson is, he gets it done.
Yeah, absolutely. Next up, Lamar Jackson versus Tennessee. Like you said, they do have a poor defense, but honestly, Lamar Jackson, he got you 20 fantasy points last week. It's not, I mean, that's good. Don't get me wrong. That's definitely a start. But again, you need more. Lamar Jackson owners want more. And
I mean, they want more, but you honestly, at this point, I don't think you can really expect more.
I agree with you. I don't think. I mean, if he gets a rushing touchdown, if he gets a couple rushing touchdowns in a big rushing game, I think he'll have those big games. But he's just not seeing the same passing games like we saw last year, and that's kind of limiting its upside.
Yeah, not seeing the same offense.
Yeah, it's really not.
It just looks clunky, and I don't know.
Yeah.
His ceiling so far has been 28 points.
Yeah.
And so no 30-point games. So not very high upside. Got him at 8.
Yeah. Tom Brady, number 9. Tough matchup versus the Rams. That's on Monday night. He has a lot of weapons. I do think they're still, I mean, that is a high octane passing offense. I do expect them still to be throwing a lot. And I do think Tom Brady's still going to find himself as a top 12 play, and I like him at number 9 there.
Yeah, I agree. Great weapons, so got to put him in. And it's Tom Brady.
Yeah.
Next we got at New Orleans, and it's a decent matchup, or at least it's inside, so no weather to worry about.
Yeah, he has his weapons. They're coming off of the bye. New Orleans does have a tough defense. I do expect Matt Ryan to score some points. He has been better when they are healthy. It does look like Calvin Ridley is playing, Julio Jones is playing, and I do think I do think Matt Ryan gonna have a multi-touchdown game.
I agree. I think he'll be playing from behind too, so beware of the witching hour for Matt Ryan.
Yeah, definitely. Cam Newton, this is all about rushing upside, but it is a really poor matchup versus Houston. Houston is one of the worst defenses in the NFL, but Cam Newton pretty consistent with that rushing offense. Yeah,
I agree. I put him at a safe start because of that, and especially with guys going down right now. Houston's a very favorable matchup. that slides him up to 11.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to? I mean, I'm kind of high on a couple of the Patriots guys. I think they can have a good week. Um, Next up, Alex Smith versus Cincinnati. This is the highest he's been ranked. He had a really big game last week. He played very well. Did not get any touchdowns, but he threw for almost 400 yards, which would have led to a big game had he scored a touchdown or two.
This is true, and he's got another favorable matchup in Cincinnati. So
Exactly.
it-
Favorable
I
matchup.
would expect a great, or maybe not great, but at least you won't be disappointed with Alex Smith start.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he, gets some touchdowns this week, unlike last week.
And then we got Jameis Winston. First time he's been on here. Obviously, Drew Brees going out with the collapsed lung and then the broken ribs and the shoulder. And it looks like we're going to see Jameis for a couple weeks. At least a month. Because I've had collapsed lungs, and they're not going to let him play for like a month.
Yeah, and I think they can win games without Drew Brees and with Jameis Winston. But I like Jameis Winston. I think he has high touchdown upside. I will say though, like I said, I don't like him in a I'm not starting him in a 12-man league. In a deeper league, sure, I'll start Jameis Winston. It's a favorable matchup, but again, in a 12 or a 10-man league, I'm gonna be honest though, I'm adding Jameis Winston, and they do have another matchup versus Atlanta. I'm just going to wait 1 week maybe. If you have the bench spot and say if you're a guy, I don't know, you've got maybe you've been rolling with Matt Ryan or Cam Newton or Ryan Tannehill at quarterback, I'd say pick up Jameis Winston and see what happens this week. Maybe don't play him, but see what happens.
So in Vegas, there's a plus 900 bet for Jameis Winston to throw a pick six. So if you're into betting, it's good odds. I like them. It'd be something to think about.
Yeah.
Throw 100, make 1,000.
All right. So Jameis finds himself at number 13. Next up, Tua Tagovailoa at Denver. That is a great matchup at Denver. I do think the safest, highest upside play out of all of the Dolphins is their defense this week.
Yeah, I will agree with that. Drew Lock threw 3 picks last week. But Tua's been really safe, man. He's not turning the ball over. He's making good decisions. He looks like he has great poise in the pocket.
Yeah, and again, he has that rushing upside. I don't think we've fully seen it. I don't think we've fully seen it play out, but he does have the rushing upside. He's rushed for 7 carries for 35 yards 2 weeks ago. Last week for 6 carries, only for -1 yard. But he is quick, and I do think we're going to see some more rushing upside out of Tua. And the most important thing though is he's had 2 touchdowns in back-to-back weeks. Has some favorable matchups coming up at Denver, at the Jets, and then at home versus Cincy. So Tua, definitely a quarterback I'm picking up, I'm rostering, and I really think that after this week, he's going to find himself into the top 12.
Yeah, we'll just have to see. Like, hopefully, I want to see him play from behind for once. But again, I think this matchup in this team is like it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know how much, and that is also the case for the next 3 weeks. They are a team where their defense is elite. They beat Arizona, they beat the Chargers. They beat the Rams, and their defense just totally, made their quarterbacks look like totally different quarterbacks. So, I think, it's very realistic at this point to say that Tua is going to start out his career 6-0, right?
I can see that.
I mean,
until he comes to play the Chiefs, yeah.
They beat the Rams, the Cardinals, and the Chargers, and with that, I don't see them losing to Denver, the Jets.
Denver, Jets, or Cincy.
Yeah, I don't.
I don't either. But I do see them probably losing to the Chiefs.
Yeah, and Drew Lock
But
is questionable going into that game. He has a rib injury. Um,
whoever the quarterback is, I like the Miami defense is safe.
yeah,
But let's go down to Joe Burrow. He's facing Washington. That's a tougher matchup.
it is a tougher
And
matchup.
Joe Burrow's averaging 18 points a game, and Washington is not giving up very many points to quarterbacks. So they're averaging around 18 to quarterbacks. So I expect them to get around 18.
Yeah. Next up, Derek Carr versus Kansas City, and Derek Carr is a player that he's kind of hard to figure out because you always expect him to do more, but they're really a team they like to run a lot. We've been seeing Devontae Booker getting carries, getting touchdowns the last couple weeks. Josh Jacobs has been, on a super hot streak the last 3 games. He's seen like 70 carries almost over the last 3 weeks. Had 3 touchdowns. Has had 3 touchdowns over the last 3 weeks. And again, Devontae Booker has also put together some nice games, and they're a team where they really like to run the ball a lot. But again, it's Kansas City. You do expect them to be behind, and they are going to be throwing the ball.
Yeah, it's going to be a shootout. I expect like last game where the Raiders did pull out the win, and Derek Carr did have his best fantasy performance at 24 points.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's just the Raiders, when they do get to the red zone, they really just like to pound the football. So that does kind of limit his touchdown upside. They're not, there's a lot of teams that when they get in close, they like to throw the ball more than they run. And the Raiders just really like to run the ball when they get in the red zone.
It's true. He had 3 touchdowns against Kansas City last time.
Yep.
Over 300, around 350 yards, and
yeah, Josh.
So I think he has upside.
Yeah, and again,
major upside.
Josh Jacobs had 2 touchdowns that game against Kansas City the first time too. They put up 40 points. They got the win, and yeah, Derek Carr definitely has upside. It's just his last couple weeks he has been a little disappointing. The Raiders, but again, the Raiders have been winning football. It's just for fantasy. So, yeah. Next up, Kirk Cousins. We had him as our third streamer option, and Alex Smith and Jameis Winston being the first 2. You don't know what to expect from Kirk Cousins. You really don't.
No, don't. But I'm hoping he can hang on to that football and keep winning us some games for the Vikings. And Skull, don't start him. I honestly, in good faith,
he's
don't want you to
17.
Start him. It's emergency only.
If you're in a deep league and somebody has multi quarterbacks above you, it's tough. But yeah, I do like him. I do think he has, he could get you 2 touchdowns. It's just it could be a game script where Dalvin Cook has a lot, just is doing everything.
I do like him where he's at 17. I think that's exactly where I like him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then we got Stafford next. He's been kind of hurt, and it's against Carolina.
Yeah, so
I don't expect a lot of points in this game.
So actually, the injury is he has a tear in his throwing thumb, and it sounds like he's gonna play through injury.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a little worried. Matt Stafford, honestly though, is he really is the toughest quarterback, one of the toughest quarterbacks we've seen, and I do think he always has multi-touchdown upside. Yeah, he has a torn ligament in his thumb. He has a supporting device on his throwing hand, but it sounds like he's able to do it. So, and again, he's one of those players, so tough it out, and I like him better than these next 2. We don't really need to touch on Ryan Tannehill, Phillip Rivers. You don't want to really start these guys. You're just hoping that one of them gets 2 touchdowns.
Agreed.
Let's kick off the running back rankings here. Number 1, Dalvin Cook. We were just talking about Kirk Cousins, so that brings us to Dalvin Cook. This game script could definitely just go very heavy Dalvin Cook.
Yeah, and it might even. I'm hoping for a blowout, and then it's Madison the whole second half. That's what I'm hoping for.
I agree with you. Dalvin had that little scare last week where he went down with injury. This is a game and a team and we're at a point in our season where we really should be using Madison a lot when we are ahead. And there are a lot of most of the situations when we use Madison, the way we have really good running schemes. When Madison comes in, he does very well.
Yeah, I agree. I can't not well enough for me to tell you to play him
No,
or
no.
rank him, but
I guess that's me as a Vikings fan, but I do think Dalvin Cook, expect a monster game from him. So Dalvin Cook obviously number one, and obviously these guys are kind of number one and two for. I mean, well, maybe we'll see if McCaffrey comes back, but Dalvin Cook and Alvin Kamara have been so impressive. Alvin Kamara's touchdown upside is through the roof. Obviously his ranking might knock a tiny bit if this is standard.
yeah, I agree.
But this is half point PPR. I do think with Drew Brees out, they're going to run the ball. He'll see a little bit more carries, and I think Jameis will still be a safe option in the passing option. I mean, he fuels that entire offense.
Yeah, Kamara is the focal point, and they target him around 20 touches a game. It seems to be what they like to get him, either through the air or on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, they like to get him that ball, and he's really good with it. He gets in the end zone.
Yeah. Next up, Nick Chubb versus Philly. We saw the return of Nick Chubb last week. Obviously, he could have gotten you 6.1 more points when he stepped out of bounds, but he still put together over 18 fantasy points, which is a great game. And we really saw. I mean, this is exactly what you expected. This is exactly what you wanted out of Nick Chubb. They're going to be giving, he's going to be touching the ball 20 carries. He's extremely talented. He always has big play upside. Especially when he's getting that high volume, and they're just running him so much. So I expect another big game out of Nick Chubb.
Yeah, running for over 92 yards a game right now, averaging around 92 yards a game on 6 yards a carry. So very impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Not really involved in the passing game, but those numbers alone got him at number 3 in PPR rankings for us.
Yeah. Next up, Josh Jacobs versus Kansas City. He had a monster game last week, had over 100 yards on the ground, 4 catches, 2 touchdowns, and that's really what you want to see out of Josh Jacobs is really if he can catch the ball 2 to 4 times a game, that's going to bring his upside up so much higher because he's already going to be getting high volume in the running game. He's going to be getting red zone touches. But yeah, getting even just 2 to 4 catches a game is going to boost his value a lot in these half point PPR or full point PPR rankings.
Yeah, they really are. And Josh Jacobs is the guy in that offense. That's who they want. It's like an Alvin Kamara on New Orleans, who they want to work around. And I would even compare him more to a Derrick Henry in Tennessee because I think he even surpasses the amount of touches that Kamara gets.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw against Cleveland a couple weeks ago, he had over 30 carries on the ground. Yeah, Josh Jacobs, number 4. He's RB5 on the season. Absolute must start. You're happy with his production. He fell to the second round in a lot of drafts, so outperforming a lot of running backs drafted above him. Next up, Derrick Henry, number 5.
His left tackle's been out, which I think sucks for him.
Yeah,
but
it's Derrick Henry.
It's Derrick Henry. He's really good. Baltimore's actually given up 100 yards on the ground last couple weeks now, so I could definitely see that Derrick Henry. He's capable of it against any team, and Baltimore just let it happen 2 weeks in a row now.
Yeah, so Derrick Henry obviously going to be a must start. Next up, Aaron Jones at the Colts. Aaron Jones owners, you've been wanting more the last couple weeks, but I think this could be a week that you could get it. I think they're going to need. I mean, it is a tough matchup versus the Colts, but it's the Packers. It's a high-powered offense. I think Aaron Jones finds his way into the end zone this week. I really don't think with the volume he's been getting that he doesn't see the end zone 3 weeks in a row.
Yeah, I think he gets in this week.
Yeah. Next up, Miles Sanders at Cleveland, and he's been so efficient. The thing is about Philly though is, they use Boston Scott got a touchdown, Corey Clement got a touchdown. They actually just signed Jordan Howard, but I'm not too worried about it if I'm a Miles Sanders. It could potentially, take a couple touchdowns off the board for him, but he's still so talented, and he is getting high volume, and he does see passing work, so he's going to find himself as a top 12 play every single week going forward.
I agree with that, but like you said, it might just take away from some touchdowns from him. But
Yeah.
other than that, he gets very efficient, good yards, used in the passing game. Great PPR back. Next, we got DeAndre Swift at Carolina, and he had a great game last week. He has a Q by his name right now, but I expect that he's going to play.
Yeah, they finally gave him the touches. I mean, they said he's the RB1 and he's going to start. And
We had our doubts when they said that, but they kind of proved it last week that they weren't joshing us. And so he was productive with those touches, and we got a game against Carolina. Could be good.
yeah.
You got Kareem Hunt versus Philadelphia.
So I will say DeAndre Swift. And really quick about these rankings for those watching, make sure you check out the ranking show on Sunday, because with the way injuries have been going this season, it is like there are a lot of situations where it is tough to gain clarity on the running back situation or on any injury situations until really Sunday morning. And we'll be going live Sunday morning, and we'll have updated rankings on Sunday morning with those injuries. So keep in mind for that. I will say DeAndre Swift did not practice with the concussion, which is not good if he's not practicing on Thursday with concussion symptoms. It will make it hard for him to clear concussion protocol. And obviously he's going to Adrian Peterson or whoever's running back there is going to fall way, 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 way down than where DeAndre is at number 8. But if DeAndre suits up, I like him a lot at number 8.
Next, we got Kareem Hunt at Philadelphia. And yeah, I think I still like him as an RB1, even with Nick Chubb out.
Yeah.
Productive.
I mean, we saw this is exactly what we saw when Nick Chubb was healthy before, and this is exactly what Kareem Hunt owners have been wanting, where he actually has been more productive with Nick Chubb on the field.
Yeah, so safe start.
Yeah, next up, Mike Davis. Looks like Christian McCaffrey is out again with that shoulder injury. And Mike Davis, he's been a little disappointing the last couple weeks when he has been starting. But it's versus Detroit. They're the absolute worst team versus the run. And I do expect a big game out of Mike Davis this week.
I agree.
Next up, Antonio Gibson. Yeah, he had a great game last week. 2 touchdowns versus Cincy. It's another just great matchup. So he's been an absolute steal this season.
No doubt. I'm guessing you got him off waivers. Maybe you drafted him late, and now I think he should be in your starting lineup week to week.
Yeah. You can say the same thing about the next guy here, James Robinson. He's been absolutely phenomenal. It's a tough matchup versus Pittsburgh. But again, it's James Robinson. You can't sit James Robinson at this point.
No, increased workload the last 3 weeks. It's been a great start.
Yeah. Pittsburgh is obviously the number 1 team versus the running back, but he does have passing upside, which will keep him passing and touchdown upside. I mean, he's seeing over the last 3 weeks, he's been seeing over 22 carries a game, and He's had over one game he had 5 targets, another game he had 6 targets. So that's just massive workload.
Absolutely. And then next, James Conner at Jacksonville. Been disappointing the last couple weeks, but he's got a good matchup against Jacksonville and hoping to get back on track.
Yep, just looking for more usage, more touchdowns. So hopefully this is the week we see it. And the same thing is going to be said about Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Obviously the talent is there, but we're just hoping the usage is there. Last week his fantasy week was kind of saved by getting that touchdown. Or obviously he was on a bye last week, but
last time he played, yeah.
Yeah. So we're really hoping for more upside or for more volume for Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but being the starting running back on such a high-powered offense, you got to have him. You got to. I mean, he's going to be an RB2 still.
Yeah, and he did not practice with an in quotations illness, so I don't know what that means. Check out Sunday. We'll know more.
Yeah. Next up, Todd Gurley at New Orleans. And, Todd Gurley is going to find himself, it's just touchdowns. And you know the deal with Todd Gurley. You're going to hope that he gets a couple of catches. You're going to hope that he falls into the end zone. But other than that, his upside is limited. But, again, his touchdown upside is so high that I do think he finds his way in the end zone this week.
Yeah, he's just been a safe RB2 as of so far.
Yeah, and exactly. At this point in the season, his production and consistency, it's hard to argue with not having him ranked inside the top 20 every single week. So, tough matchups coming up, but I do think New Orleans, he can find his way in the end zone. Next up, Salvon Ahmed. This is obviously the highest he's ever been ranked. And this is a great matchup at Denver. He saw high volume last week, and I kind of expect to see the same thing again this week.
I'm hoping so. I'm flexing them, and we're gonna hope they get the lead and give them the same usage.
Yeah, I mean, again, with that defense, I really expect that. So Salvon Ahmed, I think, is going to be a really safe RB2 this week with some really high upside.
Next, we got Zeke.
Yeah, Zeke.
Hopefully, he can eat against the Minnesota defense. I don't know if Eric Kendricks is going to play. That would help him. Obviously, Zeke, I think, if he sits out. And, Dallas really needs a win.
Yeah, Minnesota's middle of the pack versus the running back. I will say, though, our defense, we have played a lot better over the last 3 weeks. And if our defense kind of produces like it has been the last 3 weeks, I do think Zeke is still going to find it's just going to be such a focal point of the defense where he's still going to be a low-end RB2 rest of season.
And I think the Vikings will have the lead, too, so there might not be as much run as you'd like.
I agree with you.
Elliott. But if Andy Dalton is playing, it's worthy to note that Zeke's targets were a lot higher with Dalton.
I believe he had 8 catches, like Andy Dalton game.
Yeah.
So that's really what you need if you're a Zeke owner. So Zeke's going to be number 17. He has been getting the volume. So next up, J.D. McKissic, and he's been Alex Smith's favorite target.
Yeah, and standards, he's obviously a little bit lower, but PPR, he is an RB2, and that's safe.
Super safe. I mean, he's actually been getting more targets with Alex Smith than Terry McLaurin. He's been seeing double-digit targets. And he found his way in the end zone last week. And, yeah, half-point, full-point PPR. He could be, that's massive. So, J.D. McKissic coming in at 18. We obviously, we really like him with Alex Smith at quarterback. A lot of checkdowns to the running backs.
Yeah, 15 targets at half.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Next up, Kalen Ballage. And he's kind of turning into the player that we thought Justin Jackson was going to be.
Yeah. Absolutely. Justin Jackson got hurt, and Kalen Balaj stepped in and produced just like we thought Justin Jackson was going to.
Yeah,
And
it's a great matchup.
it is a great matchup, and it's against the Jets, who we played for earlier. So another quote unquote revenge game. Just had one against Miami.
Yeah.
I think this is the last week I have Kalen Balaj ranked this high if Eckler comes back, like is rumored. But I think if you're going to start Kalen Balaj, get it in now.
Yeah. And next up, Damian Harris does have another questionable injury, but I'm honestly not too worried. He had a questionable designation going in all last week, and then he had 22 carries for 121 yards. And now he has zero passing upside, but this is at Houston, and honestly, I think he could be in for another 100 yards, and I think he could get a touchdown this week. Rex Burkhead got 2 touchdowns last week, and Houston's been, I believe, the second worst team against fantasy running backs. Third worst. And again, I expect a lot of volume. He's been averaging over 5 yards a carry, closer to 6 actually. So Damian Harris, I think, is going to be in line for a really big game.
Yeah, for sure. I like him a lot. Standard league, he's a monster. Anytime he gets over 15 touches, you can see 100 yards next to his name. Doesn't usually get used in the passing game, but yeah, like you said, Houston is 30th against the running back, and look for him to be productive. And facing off against him, we have Duke Johnson. He's 21. And
he was a little disappointing last week. We thought we were going to get more, but again, I do think this week will be a little bit better. Obviously, David Johnson on IR. And heads up, really quick for those of you who are watching, I do want to flip to the wide receiver ranks just to show you where we have the receivers ranked. DeAndre Hopkins number 1, DK Metcalf number 6, Tyler Lockett number 9, and Christian Kirk number 8, but he has huge upside. So let's see, Duke Johnson. Yeah, we want to see more out of Duke Johnson this week.
absolutely. And yeah, hopefully he does it. And then Ronald Jones is next. He had a huge week last week. That 98-yard touchdown run is enormous.
Career game. It's just it's tough.
You said Fournette, and now it looks like Jones is ahead of Fournette. So
yeah,
we're hot and we're cold and we're yes and we're no. So
all right.
I just don't know with this one.
Yeah, it's tough because we were saying for a couple weeks that it's trending towards Leonard Fournette, and it was for a couple weeks, 2-3 weeks in a row there, and then obviously we get a big Ronald Jones game.
I'm not surprised if Fournette outscores Jones this week.
I agree with you.
I'm gonna have Jones ranked higher.
It's gonna be week to week.
Yeah. Next is Chase Edmonds at Seattle. That's tonight, Thursday night football, and I like him to outscore Kenyon Drake.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's going to be a lot of throwing in this game. Again, these are half-point PPR rankings. Full point or standard scoring, I think Kenyon Drake would find himself a little higher than Chase Edmonds, but I do think they'll be throwing the ball a lot. And Seattle's been better against the run than they have the past, and I just don't see, again, the Rams game was a little weird last week. Where the running backs for the Rams got all the touchdowns, but I don't see that happening for Arizona this week.
Yeah, but I think both of them are safe flexes.
Yeah, I agree.
And then we got Nyheim Hines versus Green Bay. great matchup. 31st against fantasy running back. He's the pass catching back, and they use him in the empty formation a lot. I like Naheem Hines the best out of this Colts back.
Yeah, and especially if he gets, you know, if he gets
getting the
double
touchdown.
digit carries, even if it's just 10 carries, that's going to be huge for him.
Absolutely.
So let's see. We'll go to Gio Bernard, and like we said, we don't think Joe Mixon is going to play. It's a tough matchup at Washington, but again, we're at the point where if he's the starting running back and there's no one else going to be really taking touches for him, he's going to find himself at this point.
Yeah. I agree. It's where it's a tougher matchup, and he's just the substitute for Joe Mixon right now. So I like him where he's at.
Yeah. We touched on Fournette earlier. He could outscore Ronald Jones. We're not totally sure. He gets involved in the passing game, which we like to see. It's a tough matchup versus the Rams, but again, he's a running back on a high-powered offense. It's just you don't know which way it's going to tilt.
Yep. And then we got Darrell Henderson at Tampa Bay. Another tough matchup, and it looks like they're getting Cam Akers involved now in the backfield.
He actually
and
led the
that might hurt.
backfield in touches last week. He did not get the touchdowns. Malcolm Brown got 2 touchdowns. Darrell Henderson got a touchdown. But Cam Akers did lead the backfield in touches. But it was a super close. It was like 10-9 and 9. So it's really looking like it's a full committee backfield there.
Absolutely, which is going to leave them all out pretty much, 28 to 40. So
Yeah. Melvin Gordon, he's been really disappointing. We just hope he gets more volume this week. Philip Lindsay also was crazy disappointing last week. I don't think this probably, if he doesn't have a good game, I can't continue to rank him inside the top 30. I can't tell you to start Melvin Gordon.
yeah, but at 30, I'm not necessarily telling you to start Melvin Gordon.
Yeah.
Either. So.
So we're kind of getting into the point of running backs. Honestly, after Darrell Henderson, most of these guys I'd look to start. If you're looking for these guys as flex, I'd look to flex a wide receiver.
For the most part, I agree. Wide receivers a lot deeper this year, and I like out of the bottom 10, I think I like Jamal Williams and Carlos Hyde the most.
Yeah, Carlos Hyde's going to have touchdown upside. Again, we're not sure what we're going to get out of Alex Collins, and I think for me that's the only concern why I do have him low. Pretty much, and Jonathan Taylor, Jordan Wilkins back-to-back at 33, 34. It is just so tough because
they have great matchups.
Yeah.
I'll say that.
Like none of these guys at this point are, you can say for sure, are going to lead the backfield in touches. And so that's why they're all going to be bottom, 30 to 40. So I don't really need to touch a whole lot on any of them. And if you want to get to the wide receiver rankings.
Let's go to receivers.
DeAndre Hopkins, who is now locked into your lineup, but obviously that's not a question.
You were also,
Yeah.
You're good with that.
DeAndre Hopkins, number 1 at Seattle. Don't need to say much there. Keenan Allen, number 2 at New York Jets. It is a great matchup. He's been a target monster. They love throwing the ball. He's Justin Herbert's favorite target. You're really happy if you drafted Keenan Allen.
Yeah, definitely. It's been great for his draft value, and keep starting him.
Yep. Let's see. Devontae Adams, number 3 at the Colts. Again, like it's a tough matchup versus the Colts, but it's the Packers, and like I said before, man, as a Vikings fan, I think we can all vouch that Devontae Adams has, I'm not gonna say made a career, but yeah, you could go and look at a lot of highlights of Devontae Adams burning Xavier Rhodes.
Yeah. Well, yeah, good history in that matchup, so I like him. I like him every week, but it's a good matchup for him.
Yeah. Tyreek Hill, number 4, again, not much to say about that. It's a great matchup. He's been scoring big plays, big touchdowns. Tyreek Hill, obviously a top 5 play every single week. I will say, though, I think this is the highest we do have Terry McLaurin ranked, though.
Yeah, absolutely is. It's got a good matchup at Cincinnati. Been scoring touchdowns and continues to be the number 1 guy regardless of the quarterback situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then DK Metcalf, we got him at 6. We got him higher than Tyler Lockett. I personally don't think I do. I can't remember, but you can go check out the full rankings below the link. And DK Metcalf has a tough matchup against Arizona. It's going to be going up against Patrick Peterson. He's been a really good cornerback. And
Yeah.
he had opportunities last game. It was his lowest performance, I think.
Yeah, he did have the touchdown called back, and Russ, I want to say, even in that game, Russ, there were a couple plays where Russ missed him, because Russ was missing a couple throws, and again, we'd like to see Russ get on track, but it's DK Metcalf. You're not going to sit him. Arizona is a bottom 10 defense against the wide receivers, and I don't think that we see, a 50-point from Tyler Lockett and 3 points from DK Metcalf. I think it's a little more even.
Agreed. Then we got Julio Jones next at New Orleans. It's a tough matchup against Lattimore. I temper expectations, but we'll have to see how this one goes.
Yeah. Juju Smith-Schuster coming in at number 8. He's been playing great football lately. Honestly, if you've got any of these Pittsburgh Steelers receivers at this point, you kind of got to start them. The upside is through the roof for all 3 of them. But Juju Smith-Schuster, it does look like between big play and targets, he's the best combination of the 2, and he's finally performing like the player you drafted him to be.
Yeah, definitely. He's exactly. Finally turning into a draft pick worthy of his value.
I agree with you.
And we got Tyler Lockett versus Arizona. Obviously locked in if you're watching this. And I'm hoping he has a good game for you tonight. He had a monster game last time. Don't expect that again.
I mean, he's boomer bust. We know that with Tyler Lockett.
Yeah, absolutely.
At this point in the season,
I think they watched the game last time and they said we aren't gonna let him get 15 catches.
Do you think, based on last game, that we see the same shadow coverage of Patrick Peterson, or do you think he shifts over a little bit onto Tyler Lockett?
I think he stays on DK.
Yeah, I could agree with that. But yeah, so next up we got Adam Thielen. This is a good matchup versus Dallas, and that's what's going to keep him up here. But again, he has been more disappointing. He had a great game against Chicago. Had a couple of drops actually so honestly, probably if you asked him, he's probably
your guy. Okay, Metcalf
got a touchdown.
Sure did.
Nice. We like to see that. Yeah.
Looking already worthy for that 6th ranking. Might even be higher than that tonight. But yeah, Adam Thielen, very safe versus Dallas. I like him.
You need him to get it. You do need it. He is touchdown dependent. I will say that.
I agree.
He's like the Todd Gurley of receivers.
True.
Where just like the highest, he's like one of the players where like the highest majority of his points come from touchdowns.
Yeah. And his yard per catch is the highest.
Yeah, but again, great matchup for Adam Thielen versus Dallas. You're gonna find him as a start. Next up, Calvin Ridley at New Orleans, and again, him and Julio Jones. I think it helps each other. Calvin Ridley looks like he's gonna be healthy this week, and that's what you want. Calvin Ridley obviously must start still.
Yeah, I agree. When healthy, you gotta put him in. It's been great. And then we got Deontay Johnson at Jacksonville, favorable matchup, and he's been pretty safe as well
Yeah, he's been an absolute target monster.
when he
He's
plays.
yeah when he plays, and that's again I just think Juju is the safer play. But again, Deontay Johnson all the way up at number 12. So you're gonna I really think you got to find a way to start him this week against Jacksonville.
We got AJ Brown at Baltimore. That's a harder matchup, and he did not play well last Thursday. Had a couple drops, dropped what would have been probably a touchdown, and I expect him to bounce back.
I agree with you. I do think he's really vital to the offense. He's very talented. He gets a lot of yards after catch, and I do think those drops that he had last week are not gonna continue. So AJ Brown, super talented receiver. Favorite target for Ryan Tannehill up at number 13. And next up, we have 3 receivers inside the top 14 on this offense, and I like that. Honestly, I stick with that. Chase Claypool up at 14.
It could be a big day for the Steelers. I expect them to come out with a victory, and he has just such high upside, and they love using him. So I agree. I like him at 14 too.
Chris Godwin
Yeah,
up at 15.
Chris Godwin at 15. I like him the best out of the Buccaneers receiving core.
Rams are the number
don't
one
know
team
why.
against wide receivers. I honestly think Jalen Ramsey is going to be on Mike Evans.
Yeah, that could be a thing that he shadows him like he did DK.
Yeah, again, I do think he's the safest play out of all these, especially in any PPR format.
Yeah, I agree. Next up, we got Robert Woods against Tampa Bay, and that's on Monday night. And you know what? He's been a safe start.
Yeah, Jared
Number
Goff's
19 receiver.
obviously been disappointing, but yeah, he's Robert Woods.
12.5 points a game.
He's been super solid.
Just the ceiling has been 25 points, and that was with 2 touchdowns, I believe. So
Yeah. So next up, Michael Thomas, number 17. And if you watched our preview show, we told you he was a sell target. We don't like him that much the rest of the season. We think you can get some. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see with Jameis Winston, but I just think the Saints offense aren't playing to Michael Thomas.
yeah, we'll have to see how that goes. Atlanta has been bad defensively. It could be a good matchup, but yeah, we'll see how this one ends up.
Yeah. Next up, Justin Jefferson. He's kind of a boomer bust player, but he is just so talented. And it's a great matchup versus Dallas. I think he could be in line for a really big game this week.
Yeah, I'm starting him this week, so I'm hoping so.
Yeah, it's against Dallas, so you can feel good about it too.
Yeah, it's just every week I start him is the week he doesn't do so good. When he's on my bench, he does really good. So that's just me personally, but I like him this week again. Next up, we got Will Fuller versus New England. That's gonna be keep an eye out of the weather. but Will Fuller is the safest receiver on the Houston offense, and he's start him every week.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep an eye on the weather, but again, start him still. It should be a good. He's the favorite target for Deshaun Watson in a high-powered passing offense.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next up, Robbie Anderson, and obviously he's gonna slip a lot if this is not PPR format, but he's had a really safe floor, being the favorite target still of Teddy Bridgewater. We're not sure if Teddy Bridgewater is gonna play, but and again, this is why we say on Sunday, check it out, because I do think they could fall. Teddy Bridgewater is super tough. So it's something to keep an eye on, though. But Robbie Anderson, super safe PPR floor.
And then next up, we got T. Higgins at Washington. Tougher matchup. Really good game last week. I think he had a fumble, though. Besides that.
Yeah, and he out-targeted Tyler Boyd, and I wouldn't be surprised if this could be one of those things where we see T. Higgins might be seeing a little more favorites in those tougher matchups, but it's something to keep an eye on. But again, I do like all these pass catchers. It's just a really tough matchup at Washington.
Yeah, I agree.
And then DJ Moore, another he's a big player. He got a couple of those big plays and had a really great game last week. And again, it's another great matchup versus Detroit.
Yeah, he comes up with big plays, and that's what we call upside here in fantasy football. So something to keep an eye on. Looks like he might not have Teddy on him. Not sure who's gonna be starting, but might hurt his value a little bit. But I like DJ Moore for big play upside.
Yeah, I agree with you. Next up, Cooper Kupp. And again, we talked about Jared Goff being a little disappointing. Cooper Kupp has had some big games, but PPR, he's not the player that he was last year.
Yeah, and it's a tough matchup at Tampa Bay.
Yeah. Next up, we got Jakobi Meyers at Houston, and check the rankings back on Sunday. He honestly might climb a little bit, especially if Teddy Bridgewater's out. I will say that. But Jakobi Meyers could be in line for a really big game. He had a nice game against Baltimore, and everyone was saying he only had 2 good games with double digits because he played, had some favorable matchups, but he put together a great game, had the passing touchdown against Baltimore. But I think we could potentially see another double-digit target game from Jakobi Meyers this week.
Yeah, he's been used in the offense, and that's volume is key for fantasy football. And the fact that he can pass in that Patriots offense makes them, they like to do their little trick plays, and that could easily go for a touchdown. So he's got that upside as well. I like him going on through the rest of the year.
Yeah, I agree with you. And then Tyler Boyd at Washington. We talked about T. Higgins. We're just a little bit higher on T. Higgins this week, but Tyler Boyd I think is still a pretty safe floor in any PPR formats. Just temper expectations with a really tough matchup at Washington.
Absolutely. I got nothing else to say. I have him on the roster and I'm probably sitting him this week.
Yep.
He's been a start for most of the season.
Yeah. And again, I don't think there's too much to worry about going forward. But again, I think there's a lot of pass catchers, and you're a lot higher on them with when it's not a tough matchup like this.
Certainly. We got Devontae Parker at Denver. We'll see. I like him, but I'm not as high up as you are on him.
I think he could have a good game this week. We will see. Game script could go against his way, but I do think a big Devontae Tua game is coming.
Yeah, his just ceiling to me isn't spectacular, and it's just a very floor play to me. So
Yeah.
I like him a little bit lower than I'll probably have him at like 32
Okay.
on this list. So I'd have him behind Mike Evans, but Devontae Parker is decent.
Yeah. So next up, Kenny Galladay with the questionable designation at Carolina, and again, he's such a talented player. Obviously, not the Indiana game or Indianapolis game where he got injured, but every other game besides that, he had a touchdown or 100 yards in every single game. So he's a very talented player, and I think if he suits up and is healthy, he's going to be a start for me if he's healthy. We'll get much more clarity by Sunday, but he practiced Wednesday and Thursday, so I think it's looking good for Kenny Galladay.
Yeah, it is. I love Kenny G. Start him if he's playing. That's my advice.
Yeah.
And then the rest of these guys, I think, are very viable flexes. Like all the way down to, I say, Brandon Cooks. I'm very comfortable starting them in my flex.
Yeah, I agree with you. Let's see.
Maybe Antonio Brown's kind of a gamble.
He's a gamble, but don't be surprised. Like, if he has another week where he gets, if he's getting a high amount of targets, I do think we have to expect Antonio Brown to be a big part of this offense going forward. And I do think, that the potentially was just the beginning.
I'll have to see. Yeah, he could be. I hope so, because like that could be a very fun offense.
Yeah, absolutely. He had 8 targets last week. Has some. I don't know about these next. Next 3 weeks it's tough. He has L.A. They're number 1 versus the fantasy wide receivers, giving up the least amount of points. Kansas City giving the 4th least amount of points. Then they have the Week 13 bye. Very strange there. But then weeks 14, 15, and 16 is Minnesota, at Atlanta, at Detroit. So 3 great matchups. Antonio Brown, definitely a player that, if you don't already have him, obviously I don't know if you're going to go out and trade him at this point, but if you have him, I definitely would keep him. And you had 5 targets the first game, 8 targets the second game. I think they're going to continue to build the rapport there.
Yeah. Any guys you really think could outperform their rankings?
Let's see.
I think Amari Cooper. Let's say this: Amari Cooper is very boomer bust for me. Like he's had the stinker games, but he's also very capable of big play 100-yard games with a touchdown. So I think he could outperform his ranking.
Yeah, I agree with you. We could be in line for a big Curtis Samuel game, especially if Teddy Bridgewater is out. Curtis Samuel could be the favorite receiver out of there.
He might get work out of the backfield as well.
Well, we've already seen with Christian McCaffrey out, he definitely will be getting work out of the backfield. He just might be getting more. Allen Lazard, activated off IR, is going to be playing. I don't know if I'm going to start him this week. He's at number 40, but he's definitely a player that's rosterable. He was a top 15 receiver when he was healthy next to Davante Adams and when Davante Adams missed. And I do think he's the favorite number 2 target in that offense, and that could actually they could him and Aaron Rodgers could have a really nice connection rest of season.
Yeah, we'll see how he comes back and does.
Yeah.
I'll be intrigued.
And then just one thing I did want to say is this is the first week we do not have any Philadelphia Eagles ranked at the wide receiver position. If I'm going to start one, it's going to be Jalen Reagor, in my opinion. I'm not too high on any of those guys. It's just too many. I mean, we saw last week Greg Ward led there, and it's not looking too good.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the Eagles, so don't start them. Drop them all. Maybe grab one of their tight ends.
Yeah. So yeah, Curtis Samuel could be in line for a big game. Al Lazard could be in line for a big game. Jarvis Landry. Cleveland's been having some really tough weather. I do think though that Jarvis Landry, this could be a good game, especially in PPR. If they have, again, it's all weather dependent at this point for Cleveland. And that's kind of what's gone against him the last couple games, but it's another home matchup. We'll see what happens with the weather. And again, this is why we say it's so important. Sunday morning, check the rankings. Is there anyone else you'd like to talk about in this wide receiver rankings?
I think we can wrap up the wide receivers.
All right, let's get to tight ends. Travis Kelce and Darren Waller, number 1 and 2. Those are going to be number 1 and 2 pretty much every week now, with George Kittle being out. And Travis Kelce is going to be number 1. That's no surprise there.
Yeah.
TJ Hawkinson's TJ Hawkinson's been super solid, super consistent this year. He's been a great tight end option with the way it's been outside of Kelce and Waller. TJ Hawkinson, number 3.
Yeah. Iowa tight ends been great receiving tight ends in the league now for years and years. So they're always a start for me.
Yeah. Gronk last week only had 2 catches, but it went for 50 yards and a touchdown. And again, it's just so many weapons in this offense.
Yeah, I agree. But I think Gronkowski is a safe option. Maybe he reverts or regresses a little bit with new additions and people coming back from injury. But I think Gronkowski continues to be a solid tight end to start.
Yeah, I agree with you. Next up, Hunter Henry found his way in the end zone last week. Great matchup, but the yardage totals haven't really been there. I mean, he hasn't really lately. Last couple weeks, he hasn't eclipsed 35 yards. But again, it's a great matchup. He's PPR. He's been getting a decent amount of catches. Just has been short yardage, and you're really we're now outside of 3 for me. I feel like maybe outside of 4, we're in the point we need to get a touchdown from these guys, touchdown or bust.
I don't know about all of that. Some of these guys have decent yardage, but I mean, you always want a touchdown from the tight end. That usually determines a good winning from losing.
Yeah, Noah Fant at number 6, and it's all about health for him. It is a tough matchup, which I think could favor the tight end.
Yeah. If there's anyone I like on Miami, against Miami, I think it's Noah Fant.
Yeah,
Sweet.
I agree with you. Mark Andrews, number 7, been another kind of boom or bust player. It's a good matchup versus Tennessee, but we don't know what we're getting out of Mark Andrews. Is he getting, we don't know what we're getting.
Yeah, I think he's gonna see a decent target share, but we don't know what the production's going to look like. He's had one really good game, and other than that, not so much.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I will say though, Mark Andrews last week against the Patriots. Let me pull up his stats here. He saw his highest targets he's seen all season and catches, 9 targets, 7 catches. So he got you 9.6 half point PPR without getting a touchdown, which is really what you need to see out of Mark Andrews. So hopefully that trend continues. It's a great matchup against Tennessee. So Mark Andrews, number 7 there.
Yeah, but he's those touchdowns help him a lot, and this is the first game where he's actually gotten good receptions and yardage without touchdowns.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And we got Dallas Goedert against at Cleveland. Keep an eye on the weather and keep posted on Sunday. I started Goddard. He didn't get very many points. He's really good in garbage time. Really good in the witching hour. I hope he gets more production, but I'm also worried with Ertz coming back that he might maybe that helps him actually. Because we saw Richard Rodgers getting targets last week.
Yeah.
Number 2 tight end. So that Philly offense is confusing.
It's very confusing, but I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's tough to say what's going to happen, but I think Goddard, just based on what's happened in the past, is going to be a top 12 play. Hayden Hurst at New Orleans, number 9, and again, it's another offense where there's just a lot of targets, and he's 3rd or 4th. He usually finds himself 4th, the 4th favorite target.
Hasn't seen the end zone that many times. Been there a few times. He can get you 50 yards a game though. That's one thing I do like about him. I start him most weeks, and I feel like he's a lower tier tight end, but he's a safe start.
Yeah, I agree with you. Next up, Eric Ebron, and another thing where he's probably the 4th option. He's definitely at best 4th option for receivers on that team. So again, you really want him to get a touchdown at that point.
Yeah, for sure.
Austin Hooper though is a player that I think could develop into a tight end where he has that upside where he could get you 4 to 6 catches and 50 yards a game at tight end. We saw before, and again, we've seen weather play some really bad factors in the last couple of weeks. So hoping for better weather this week against Philly, hoping for a better week out of Austin Hooper.
Yeah, his yards have gone up the last 2 games, and it's a good matchup this week. He had before the appendicitis, he did not have a great comeback game, and but that was due to weather.
Yeah.
So keep an eye on the weather. I think you can pen him in for at least 7 this week.
Yeah, Philadelphia has been the 4th worst team, allowing the 4th most points to the tight end position. So Austin Hooper, number 11. Jonnu Smith, this is probably the lowest he's been ranked. His target share has gone down. He's been sharing targets with Anthony Fersker, but he has been finding his way into the end zone. He got a rushing touchdown last week. He's up at tight end 4. And again, it's just all touch. He's very touchdown dependent at this point.
For sure. And I don't even know we really need to touch on these last 4 tight ends.
I don't
They're
think
all
so.
Very touchdown dependent. I will tell you that.
Let's see. We'll just really quick. We'll show our kicker and defense rankings. Steelers and Dolphins, number 1 and number 2. I think one of these teams has a very high chance of scoring a touchdown. On defense, it is extremely favorable matchups. Dolphins might slide up to number 1 if Drew Lock sits, but it's tough. I mean, Steelers at Jacksonville, we don't expect much out of Jake Luton. Chargers were a streaming defense of ours. We had talked about the Dolphins last couple weeks. We told you guys to pick them up, stash them, and now you have 3 really favorable matchups. But Chargers versus the Jets, all about matchup there. I think it's Joe Flacco.
Yeah, whoever it is, it's the Jets. So
Yeah, it's the Jets.
then we got Browns versus Philadelphia is a great streaming option, I believe. Football team versus Cincinnati, another good matchup. The Vikings, this is the highest we've had them this year versus Dallas.
Yeah.
Great matchup.
That's the highest. I mean, that's the first time they've definitely been ranked over the Ravens. I think the Vikings could be in line for a really good game. We're not sure if it's going to be Gilbert or Dalton at quarterback fully yet, but either way, I don't think we expect a whole lot out of the Dallas offense. Let's see here. Eagles at Cleveland. Again, if the weather's really bad in that game, I'll probably bump them up a couple spots. Because that seems obviously just favors a low-scoring game, and you can expect maybe to see some turnovers in that. Other than that, these are the rankings. Is there anything else you need to cover, Jake?
No. I just would like to say, tune in Sunday, and we'll answer any lineup questions you got and help you guys get a better idea of what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see you guys on Sunday. All right.